What defines a man in a world ruled by pirates, violence, and chaos? Power or principles? To understand Sanji, you must first understand the strange contradiction that defines him. In a world filled with ruthless pirates, brutal warlords, and endless battles for power, Sanji lives by a moral code that many would consider irrational. He refuses to harm women, even when they are enemies. He protects the weak without hesitation, and despite the cruelty of the world around him, he insists on maintaining compassion. To some, this code looks like weakness. To others, it appears naive. But in reality, Sanji's moral framework is not born from ignorance of the world's cruelty. It is born from surviving it. His philosophy is the result of hardship, humiliation, hunger, and the deep psychological scars of a childhood where love and cruelty existed side by side. Sanji's early life was defined by rejection and emotional trauma. Born into the Vinsmoke family, he was expected to become a perfect weapon. His father believed that emotion was weakness, and that children should be engineered into soldiers who feel nothing. In that environment, compassion was treated as a defect. Sanji was mocked and abused for being different, for feeling empathy, for refusing to become the cold, emotionless fighter his father demanded. Psychologically, this experience shaped the core of Sanji's identity. When someone grows up being punished for kindness, they often face a choice: abandon that kindness to survive, or cling to it as the last piece of their humanity. Sanji chose the second path. Instead of allowing cruelty to reshape him, he built his identity around resisting it. The defining moment that shaped Sanji's worldview came when he met Zeph, the pirate who would later become his mentor. During a shipwreck, Sanji and Zeph were stranded on a barren rock, surrounded by endless ocean. Food was scarce. Hunger became a constant companion, a slow and painful reminder of how fragile human life can be. Days passed, with no rescue, no hope, and no certainty that survival was even possible. In that desperate environment, Sanji witnessed something that permanently shaped his philosophy about life and dignity. Zeph sacrificed his own leg and his own food so that Sanji could survive. This act was not just physical sacrifice, it was moral instruction. Zeph showed Sanji that strength is not measured by domination over others, but by the willingness to endure suffering for the sake of someone else's survival. From that moment forward, Sanji's moral code began to crystallize. Hunger taught him empathy, survival taught him humility, and Zeph's sacrifice taught him responsibility. Food to Sanji is no longer just nourishment. It represents dignity. It represents survival. It represents the thin line between life and death. This is why Sanji refuses to let anyone starve, even enemies. For him, denying someone food is not simply cruelty, it is an attack on the fundamental value of life itself. His profession as a chef is therefore deeply philosophical. Cooking becomes his way of protecting life without violence. It is his way of giving dignity to people in a world where dignity is often stripped away. Yet Sanji's moral code contains another defining principle that often confuses observers: his refusal to harm women under any circumstance. In the brutal world of pirates, where survival often requires ruthless action, this rule appears dangerous, even self-destructive. But from a psychological perspective, it reveals something deeper about Sanji's identity. Women were among the few figures in his childhood who showed him kindness, particularly his mother, who encouraged his compassion despite the cruelty of the Vinsmoke household. That memory became sacred. Protecting women became symbolic of protecting the last remaining piece of innocence from his past. In this way, Sanji's code is not about gender superiority or weakness. It is about honoring the compassion that once saved him from becoming the monster his family tried to create. Another fascinating dimension of Sanji's psychology is his protective instinct. Unlike characters who pursue power for dominance or prestige, Sanji's strength is almost always directed outward. He fights to defend his crew, protect civilians, and uphold the values he believes define humanity. This protective instinct stems from the trauma of being powerless as a child. When someone grows up in an environment where they cannot protect themselves from abuse or cruelty, they often develop a powerful desire to protect others once they gain strength. Sanji's combat ability therefore becomes an extension of his empathy. He does not fight because he enjoys violence. He fights because he refuses to let others experience the helplessness he once felt. Within the Straw Hat crew led by Monkey D. Luffy, Sanji plays a unique psychological role. Every member of the crew represents a different response to suffering, and Sanji represents the philosophy of compassion within chaos. While others seek adventure, knowledge, or justice, Sanji embodies care. He feeds the crew, protects them, and ensures that their journey remains humane despite the brutality of the pirate world. His presence stabilizes the emotional balance of the group. In psychological terms, he functions as the caregiver archetype, the individual who maintains group cohesion through acts of service and protection. However, Sanji's moral code also creates internal conflict. In a world where survival often requires moral compromise, rigid principles can become burdens. His refusal to harm women puts him in dangerous situations. His compassion sometimes forces him to help enemies. His loyalty often leads him to sacrifice his own well-being for others. These contradictions make Sanji one of the most psychologically complex characters in the pirate world. He constantly navigates the tension between practicality and principle, between survival and morality. The deeper philosophical question embedded in Sanji's story is whether morality can survive in a chaotic world. Pirates fight for treasure, governments manipulate power, and countless lives are lost in battles for dominance. In such a world, Sanji's code appears almost rebellious. He is not rebelling against authority, he is rebelling against moral decay. Every time he feeds someone who is starving, every time he refuses to harm a woman, every time he risks himself to protect others, he is asserting a powerful idea that even in the darkest environments, humanity can choose dignity. Sanji's journey ultimately teaches an important psychological lesson about identity. Trauma can shape a person, but it does not have to corrupt them. Many individuals who experience cruelty adopt the same cruelty as a survival mechanism. Sanji chooses the opposite. He transforms suffering into empathy. He transforms hunger into generosity, and he transforms rejection into loyalty. His identity is therefore not defined by the pain he experienced, but by the values he chose in response to it. In the end, Sanji stands as one of the most compelling moral figures in the pirate era. Surrounded by chaos, greed, and violence, he insists on preserving something fragile yet powerful: compassion. His strength is not just measured in kicks and battles, but in the quiet moments when he feeds the hungry, protects the vulnerable, and reminds the world that honor can still exist even among pirates. Sanji's philosophy challenges us to ask a difficult question. In a world that constantly rewards ruthlessness and domination, is it possible to remain kind without becoming weak? Sanji's answer is clear. Kindness is not weakness. Compassion is not naive. And sometimes, the greatest act of rebellion in a violent world is simply choosing to care.